Pursuant to Section 2A of House Resolution 996, House Resolution 995 is hereby adopted.
So, Christina, your reaction now that we have watched this vote actually take place, is this a win for Republicans? How do they spin this? What's the headline if you're sort of trying to lead the messaging for them?
Well, for the Republicans right now, I mean, they're obstructionists, and that is their only goal, to make sure that Joe Biden can just not really move forward with any particular agenda. They want to control the agenda to essentially tell their primary voters, especially whatever Democrats want, we've just said no, even if it's something that they've previously agreed on. So since the speaker has, had some colossal failures in his very short tenure, he's going to market this as any minor win is just, I've got my caucus under control. We are a unified group. We know that there are several factions within the Republican Party, but the Republican Party thus far has not put forward any new ideas in the legislative branch. Their only goal, as Curtis mentioned before, is to try and impeach folks. We've asked them several times, well, you want to impeach all these individuals in the Democratic Party for what? What crimes? What misdemeanors? And it doesn't matter. They just know that our voters want blood. They want red meat, and we're going to give it to them. And so even if it does end up with a little egg on their faces, they'll still keep trying because they want to make sure that Joe Biden is seen as ineffective when they go to their voters in November.
We're now going to bring back NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Surkin, who's in Washington with more. Julie, talk to me. What can you tell me?
Well, this vote just closed, as you see on your screen. The House voted 214 to 213 along party lines to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. 3 Republicans voted against doing so, the same that we saw in that initial failed vote last week. That includes Tom McClintock of California, Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, who has since announced that he will be resigning, not seeking another term in Congress, and also Ken Buck of Colorado, who is also retiring at the end of his term. Nonetheless, this now seals the deal. The first time in 150 years that a cabinet secretary has been impeached by the House. This will now go over to the Senate, whereas we were just talking about, Charles, that is very unlikely that Senate Democrats, of course, who control that Senate, act on this, that they hold Mayorkas accountable for what they say is a political exercise. Nonetheless, they are required to take this up, hold some sort of trial, certainly with cabinet secretaries as opposed to presidents, for example, as we've seen with former President Trump. The process is a little bit different. Majority Leader Schumer gets to dictate that somewhat, but certainly this is seen as a partisan and political process by Democrats, by the Homeland Security Department itself, which just released a statement to that effect. And certainly the Senate will have to take this up once they're back from recess, which is not going to be this week. It's not going to be next week. It's not going to be dealt with likely until the end of February, if not March.
Julie, have you heard throughout today, as you know, there is a special election going on in New York. It's for the replacement of George Santos' seat, which only brings to bear how important these thin margins in the House of Representatives are. Has that at all been a conversation among any of the members you've talked to about what that would do to even the scales in a situation like this?
Certainly, it's not happening in a vacuum. The reason you're seeing this vote take place tonight of all nights is because you also have that special election happening on Long Island in New York 3 to replace George Santos, who, of course, was kicked out of Congress at the end of last year. And certainly Republicans saw tonight as maybe their final shot to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, somebody who they've said has mishandled the crisis at the border, who has misrepresented the facts at the border to the American people. And so certainly tonight was their last chance to do it, because they could very well see a Democrat flip that seat. Certainly that election has not been decided yet, but that was definitely a political calculation they had. And they, of course, needed Steve Scalise, who is standing a few feet away from me here to my right, to come back from his cancer treatment to cast that vote, because we saw what happened last week when they didn't have enough votes to proceed.
Secretary Mayorkas has just released the following statement, quote, House Republicans will be remembered by history for trampling on the Constitution for political gain rather than working to solve the serious challenges at our border. While Secretary Mayorkas was helping a group of Republican and Democratic senators develop bipartisan solutions to strengthen border security and get needed resources for reinforcement, House Republicans have wasted months with this baseless, unconstitutional impeachment. Christina, your reaction to what we've just seen on the House floor and, of course, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas' statement?
I mean, Charles, you just said it. Every moment we spend on useless impeachment shenanigans and political theater is time spent away from actually providing goods and services for American people. I mean, this is the whole Republican agenda. They refuse to work on legislation, policy, and moving this country forward. They are really obsessed with the theatrics of it all. But even when it goes to the Senate, and we know Chuck Schumer runs a tight ship, and we know that the vast majority of Democrats will, do their due diligence as, they are sworn to do, but it's still a waste of time. And so any time that they're spending going through and making sure that, they dot their I's and cross their T's the way they should, it's time that they're not making legislation. It's time that they're not researching. It's time that they're not moving this country forward for the myriad of issues that are in front of us, domestic and international. And so, I think Toni Morrison said, racism is, I'm paraphrasing, essentially a time suck, right? It's meant to sort of waste our time and take time away from us. The same way Republicans, they want to take time away from effectiveness of Democrats. And they've been relatively successful ever since Donald Trump got his hands on the reins of the presidency.